Damage in ESO can sometimes be very confusing for the new player or just veteran players alike. You hear terms like direct damage, damage over time, you hear area of effect, you hear single target, etc. Well, today in this guide, I'm going to explain damage to you so you know how to build your character and what exactly certain skills do that you may not even realize. Because some people may be using a skill paired with maybe a champion point star that really isn't doing anything for their build. So let's go ahead and help you out with this. I just want to give a shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. Thank you so much for that support. If you want to check out more about the Patreon or the YouTube membership, I'll have more on that at the end of the video. Okay, so an important distinction that we need to make off the bat is that damage in ESO is either considered direct damage or damage over time. Now, I want to mention that a lot of the reference I'm going to be using in this video today is from Alcast, one of the content creators of ESO. He's got a lot of great resources on his website at alcasthq.com, and I'm going to be referencing some things from that website, and I'm going to have his website linked down below as well. So I just want to mention that. So thank you, Alcast, for having such great resources, because this is a topic for me that I have over time been confused by. Over time, it's something I've had to learn, and over time, it's something that I haven't fully understood. And so I wanted to make sure that I was saying the correct things and that I am portraying the correct information to you all. And so with saying that, the terms that really get people confused sometimes with damage is when they start hearing single target or area of effect. And these are things that I've confused myself, and I'm sorry if I've confused anyone else with it, but these are things I've confused myself because it makes sense when you actually say it, and it's not wrong in some cases, but in reality, what single target and area of effect really mean is single target is defining the type of skill that you're using. Area of effect is defining the type of skill that you're using, right? You can have a single target skill that does direct damage, damage over time, or both of them again at the same time. You don't have single target damage skills. The single target is defining what the skill is hitting. Is it hitting one enemy, or is it hitting an area of effect or multiple enemies? Okay, I hope you see the difference I'm trying to make here. Is the skill targeting a single enemy? Is the skill targeting an area of effect? Is this skill targeting an area on the ground, right? So this is an important difference for you that you need to understand when it comes to this topic. So let's dive into what each of these things are. I want to reference Alcast's website here because he has a great definition of what direct damage and damage over time is for anyone that is confused. It says here, damage that hits the target with a single hit is classified as direct damage in ESO. Some single target's abilities that have direct damage are Force, Pull, Swallow Soul, etc., right? Some area of effect abilities that have direct damage are these skills right here. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I have a diagram here later that's going to help you visualize this. But then if we look at damage over time, he talks about damage that hits the target over a period of time is considered damage over time in ESO, right? And he has the same thing. He has some examples and all that good stuff as well. It didn't say damage that hits a target with a single hit is single target damage. It's direct damage. And then there's single target skills that do that, area of effect skills that do that as well, right? And again, you can have a single target skill that does direct damage and damage over time, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Something I do want to note that he also mentions that I want you to understand, I'm not going to go super deep into this, but he does talk about that light attacks from fire, frost, lightning staves are considered direct damage. Heavy attacks from fire and frost staves are considered direct damage, and the lightning staff has a channeled heavy attack and is considered damage over time. That's something I do want you to understand. He also talks about any damage type such as magic, physical, poison, etc. can be classified as direct damage in ESO. With saying that, the meat I want to talk about is the diagram that I have made here that I'm going to put on the screen. And it's not a perfect diagram, okay, but it's a diagram to help you have a visual of understanding damage from a visual perspective, right? So I was calling it a Venn diagram, but I don't even know if it's really a Venn diagram anymore. But what I want you to see here is you'll see that you see direct damage and you see damage over time as the overarching themes of the diagram. And you'll see two other areas that overlap with them but don't overlap with each other. What I want to focus on first is the AoE down at the bottom. That is area of effect. That's the type of skill, right? So on the far right, you will see that I have wall of elements in this bubble that overlaps with damage over time. Because what Wall of Elements actually does is it's an area of effect skill that does damage over time. okay? It does not do direct damage. If we go all the way to the left of that side, you'll see that I have the skill Impulse in there. And these examples are examples that Alcast actually put on his website as well, and he has many other ones that you can check out as well. Impulse is an area of effect skill that does direct damage. It does not do damage over time. It only does direct damage, okay? Now, in the middle here, you'll see that these overlap. This is the skill that I found on my Dragonite that is called Eruption, which is from the Earthen Heart line, which does initially 4,953 flame damage, which that is buffed because of certain CP, which we'll get to here later. That right there is a direct damage attack, right? That's the initial single hit of the damage. Okay, but then it goes on to say it deals 1345 flame damage in the area every 1 second for 18 seconds. So this is an area of effect skill that does direct damage, but then also does damage over time. Okay, so certain CP stars are going to buff this at the same time. So we're going to get into that here a little bit later, like I said. Now let's go to the top of the diagram. This is where we have single target skills. Okay. Single target skill all the way to the right. This is Soul Trap, okay? Soul Trap is from the Soul Magic line, and this is something that targets one enemy. You see it says target enemy, okay? But it does 10,836 magic damage over 10 seconds. So going back to Alcast's definition, damage over time, and I think anyone can understand that when you hear damage over time, you understand the definition, but I'm just trying to give you guys a very basic understanding here. Damage over time, so it's doing that damage over an extended period of time, right? So that's a single target skill that does not have direct damage. It is just doing damage over time, okay? Then we go over to the left. We have Force Pulse. Force Pulse is a ability that is single target. You see target enemy, okay? Single target that does direct damage. It does not do any damage over time. It just does initial direct damage, okay? Then the skill that I have in the middle here, that is a skill from the Dragonite again that I can give a good example of, is Burning Embers, okay? This is, look at it, target enemy. So that's a single target skill, but it does initially 3,475 flame damage. So that's the initial direct damage attack. And then it does an additional 13,062 flame damage over 14 seconds. So that's the damage over time part of the skill. So it fits in the middle there, right? So this diagram is here to help you understand the differences that you can have skills that do direct damage and damage over time, or just do direct damage or damage over time, and they can be either single target or they can be area of effect, right? So big shout out again to Alcast for allowing me to understand this from his website. Again, I'm gonna have his link down below. But what I want to go into now is something that Alcast mentions that is very, very helpful, is he talks about if you're unsure about if the skill, like what type of damage the skill is doing, go into your champion points and look at it and play around with it, and you can test it. So I want to show you guys what you can do, all right? So if you look at this skill right here, Burning Embers, okay? Like I told you, this is a single target skill that does 3,475 flame damage, an additional 13,062 flame damage over 14 seconds. Okay, so this is the thing that falls in between the damage over time and the direct damage, okay? So if I go into my champion point skills, right, and you're like, if say you're unsure, like, does this do direct damage? Does this do damage over time? Right now I have Thaumaturge, which increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 2%, okay? Watch this. If I redistribute this, okay, and I take this out, okay, I'm just gonna put this in right here first, but I take this out, I confirm, okay, so I go back to this skill, you'll see that the initial direct damage, 3,475, has not changed. It's still the same, because that's not a damage over time. But you look below that, it says 12,285 damage now. It does not say the damage that it said before, okay? So now, if I go into my champion points, and I put 50 instead of into Thaumaturge, I put it into Master at Arms, which increases damage done with direct damage attacks. So I slot this star, and I confirm, okay, look at my skill now. This now does 3,753 flame damage initially, and then it has the 12,000 damage over time. So you'll see the differences there, right? That is a way that you can actually test to see if your skills are doing direct damage, damage over time. The reason that this is helpful, guys, is because if you're running a build, okay, and say you're trying to build your own character, and it's nothing wrong with trying to do your own build, do your own builds, right? But you're sitting there and you're saying, hey, I don't feel like I'm doing any damage. Like, I don't feel like I'm able to like output as much as I need to output. Like, what's going on? Well, one thing that you can take a look at is this stuff, right? So if you like, let's count my skills on my bar right now, okay? I have, this is a area of effect skill that does damage over time. This is area of effect that does damage over time and direct damage. That doesn't matter. This is something that does single target, direct damage and damage over time. This is area of effect, damage over time, okay? This is single target, direct damage. This is single target, direct damage, and damage over time. This is single target, direct damage, and this is area of effect, direct damage, and damage over time, okay? So you see that I have a mix and match of area of effect skills, single target skills with direct damage and damage over time. If you look at my CP, right, for damaging classes, these 4 stars are usually in a lot of builds, I would say, because you have things that increase your single target attacks, your things that increase your area of effect attacks, and then you have things that increase your damage over time and your direct damage. So the key is balancing which one of these is going to give you the best output of damage. But if you have skills on your bar that are all area of effect skills, and there's not a lot of single target skills, right? There's not really a reason for you to slot your CP points into deadly aim, because it's not doing anything for you. If most of your damage is coming from area of effect skills, okay, you need to slot into biting aura instead of deadly aim. If your skills are not doing any damage over time and it's just all direct damage, okay, I'm not saying that this is like ideal, but I'm just saying that if all your skills are direct damage, you have no damage over time, right? You don't need Thaumaturge. You need Master at Arms, okay? The key is finding the best combination. I'm not here to tell you what is the best combination, because that takes a ton of testing. Like, that takes, you know, really getting into the nitty-gritty of your builds. And for me, personally, I don't min-max, so I just go with a general idea. If I've got a lot of area of effect and a lot of damage over times, I'm going to put area effect and damage over time. With Dragonite, I usually do that kind of stuff because I have a lot of area effects. I could switch maybe the area of effect for direct damage since I spam Force Pulse so much, but I've been liking what I have right now on this build. But that's up for your, you know, discernment on whether or not you need to do slot into different CP stars. But that's why this is so important. Damage in ESO is something that really messes with your brain. Like, you start thinking about it in your weight, you're like, so this does damage over time, direct damage, and it's an area of effect skill at the same time. Like, it's very confusing, but I hope that this diagram that I made can help you understand this. And again, I really want to thank Alcast, because I had to research this before making this video. Alcast is a great resource for ESO. He's created tons of content for this game, and so I will have his website down below linked. But I just want you to understand that this is something that a lot of players get tripped up on, and I think a lot of players don't really understand, and it really can affect your builds negatively if you're slotting your CP stars wrong. Let me know down in the comments if you're still confused. Let me know down in the comments if it's something that you really still just don't understand, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Again, I will have Alcast's site down in the description. I'll have these links that you can check out as well if you want to go more in depth with his stuff. But what you can do as well is you can check out my other videos here in the cards that will allow you to understand ESO a little better as a beginner or a returning player. But again, thank you to the patrons, thank you for the YouTube members. You can check that out down in the description. Check out my live stream, twitch.tv/brahwegotthis, Tuesday through Friday, and you can check out our Discord and our website, brahwegotthis.com. Just remember to have faith, be great, and I'll see you on ESO.